The president.
He's been deported from America.
Followed
He's
by
next gonna be deported by Mexico.
I'm here, Gary.
hey,
What's the pig
Wow.
name? Pig slot.
Gary, yeah, just catching up on the news as I came into this room and
Everyone.
were they forcing the hand? I mean, I think have shot at more ships, at least one more ship, and then they're declaring that they just completely
Pig slot.
control the strait now, and they don't have to
Everyone
let
refers to
ship.
AI
They're
content as
making
pig
these
slot.
wild usurpations, you could say, of a critical waterway, which is a direct challenge to the the freedom of navigation of the waterways. As um, Secretary of State Rubio's speech recently talking about this, about this, like the whole
It's very
world,
AI.
the American Pax
Everyone refers to
Americana,
AI content
the
as pig
American world
slot.
order, and it relies completely on freedom of navigation, and especially guaranteeing that
seen
these
my
critical
medical
passages and
clinic
waterways are free to travel.
for
And
vaccine?
as he said, like there's been a tremendous amount of work over
Very
generations, many generations, to guarantee this. And so to just be like, oh well, Iran now doesn't like that.
my content broke Sora.
Shut it down. It's just not going to fly, right? You're talking
My
about
content
a
broke
global,
Sora, and so almost shut down the app.
Almost multi-hundred year project that they just have no
What's that?
precedent
You
or
broke the
power
internet?
to
Yes.
enforce this for any period of time. If they had a nuke, it still wouldn't work, but they could try to hold the world hostage for a bit. But there's that. I mean, I think that is really the point, and I think even the U.S. could pull out, and someone else would still put them in their place on this issue. And there's the nuclear thing, which because we haven't seen a mushroom, because we haven't seen Tel Aviv, obliterated, people don't take it seriously, right? They just, I get, and I talked here maybe last week or so about the whole false narrative and completely fake 20-year war that occurred on the justification of WMDs in Iraq. That was a complete hoax. But in this case, we know that they've declared themselves that they have the material and they're trying to enrich more, and they have enough for 11 bombs. They said it themselves, so it's like it's comparing apples to oranges to think like, oh, it's just and people are just pretending like this isn't important. And I think it's been a long time since we've seen a city obliterated. It's been since 1945 that we've seen two cities obliterated by nukes. And so I think it's just not real to people. And the cheap shots that people take in discussing this matter are just unbelievable. But yeah, I think Iran, unfortunately, it's fractured into at least two factions, but maybe more. They set it up this way, almost like a dead man switch, in a sense of like a very decentralized command structure that if you cut off the head, then it becomes like a hydra. They have this mosaic defense pattern where it just splits into smaller and smaller units that each of which feel this mandate that they have to continue the war until the very end. It is a pretty good strategy for winning, I would say, honestly. But nevertheless, it has, and yeah, it's going to be extremely expensive. The U.S. could just surrender. I mean, people have predicted. There's this guy, Jiang Shui-Chin, or I'm saying his name wrong, Shui-Chin, I think, in this Chinese quote-unquote professor guy. He's a high school teacher, but he has a good YouTube channel. But he's made some interesting predictions that we would be in this war to start with, and that at least in concert, if not directed by Israel. The excuse when Rubio gave when we started was, well, Israel was going to go in, so we had to like preemptive strike before Israel struck. That was the thing. So, there's this this idea that there could be a greater Israel project. Nobody's talking about that because they haven't seen it yet. But directionally, we may be heading towards this, where Israel is the rising power in the region, and if they show enough chutzpah, let's say, then the other Gulf countries at this point are really ready to fall in line under their leadership. And then maybe Iran will eventually make a deal, maybe even a partnership with Israel, but we're kind of a ways away from that. They've got to get through this period. But either way, Iran has set this up. They set it up from the time of the revolution. I'm sure the Shah sucked in a lot of ways, and they were getting ripped off on their oil at the time. But it basically all amounted to this crazy, fanatical revolution that is a ticking time bomb. And it's good we're going in now, and or it's good however it's happening that we're
I'm not complaining, but I wouldn't do it over again, that's for sure.
disrupting them before they can actually set off.
They just have something not carrying.
But yeah, it's messy, but this is just what happens.
Thank you, Agent. Mill, followed by Doctor.
Well, I don't know that I can articulate myself as well as everybody else has, because I'm also going in a different direction. I agree with everybody about where we're at now. And I'm not blaming Israel. I am saying that Trump knew from his generals, he knew from Marco Rubio, that this was not going to be over in a month. And he knew, he was told, any regime change was not going to come just from bombing from the air, it was going to come from boots on the ground. And everybody knows Israel can't do that. They can't go in their boots on the ground. So Trump just did his gut, what he always does, and says, I know best. And he did what he did. And now he has nothing. He can keep bombing. And I think part of him wants to say that I'll just keep bombing from the air, I'll keep bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing, and that's going to make a difference. And I don't think it will. I think he wants this war over. I think in his mind it is over. I think several people have said he wants just to get some kind of an agreement. He'll say that and that's that. I don't think that he'll ever get the agreement that he pulled us out of, because for a number of reasons. One being, who the heck does he have that are negotiating all the time? He doesn't have who Obama had. These were intelligent, smart, experienced people. They were negotiators. They weren't real estate people. They were negotiators. So we're never going to get that. With regard to Europe, I hate to do the whataboutism, but Trump already in his first term was blasting Europe. He didn't like them. They don't pay enough. And he kept, they don't do this, they don't do that. And he talked about, he threatened then about leaving NATO. Obama comes in and Russia has invaded Ukraine, and Obama was able to put together a coalition, in a day? In 2 days? So that tells you something. With regard to a coalition now, when you go and you start a war, and you don't talk to Europe ahead of time, you don't even warn them, that, I think, sets them off a little bit. And I know, Gary, you keep talking about Britain, and we all know the wrong people that are there. However, I think that they also have a right to take a look at who Trump's allegiance is, and it's Russia. And they're also, here they are, nations, countries that do not like Russia. Some feel Russia is a threat to them, and they feel that Trump is, that's an ally, that's what Trump is doing. anybody who can stand there and say Trump is letting Russia give intelligence to Iran to kill Americans, that in and of itself should be setting. That's what does set Europe off. Europe has, we don't have an agreement on anything. Trump has an agreement. He wants the new NATO to be the Gulf countries who also have a relationship with Russia. So I do think that enters into it. We never talk about it, but that might enter into how Europe feels right now. You dump us, you talk bad about us, you don't even warn us what you're going to do. I think that is a fair assessment of why they might want to get involved, nor do they trust if they do get involved. Then what happens? What happens to them? What does the United States do for them or to them? You still have this issue, I think, that they want to support Ukraine. Trump doesn't. Trump supports Russia. They don't want to support Russia. I think that enters into it in some way. It isn't just about Israel. That's not the whole thing. I don't think so. I think they know that Israel wants to keep this war going, and it does. Israel has said that this morning. They do. They want the job finished. The United States considers it finished. It's not, Trump is not going to do what is necessary. And he can say, we can all say that here in the United States, most of us don't want to see war continued under those circumstances. But that was something that our leader, our president, who makes these decisions, that's what he did. And he has to be responsible for that. So if you don't have a coalition of the right people, that's something Trump did going in. And by the way, if you think anything imminent, that Trump is going to do anything imminent, because he always threatens, he threatened today, he threatens them. He's not, because he announced today that he might not go to his son's wedding. It's not a good sign. That means Trump is lying. That means Trump will be at that wedding. He goes golfing the whole time here. While this was all going on, he was going golfing. He was going to games. He was doing everything leisurely and recreationally while he was telling everybody what they need to do to win this war. So I don't think anything imminent is going to happen, because I think if Trump announces he's not going to his son's wedding, that means he is going to his son's wedding, and nothing imminent is going to happen. So, but I do think that when we want to criticize Europe, I don't necessarily think that we should discount whatever they are expected to do, and then what do they get back in loyalty? What do they get back in return that maybe makes them not want to invest right now? And I could be wrong, and I wish somebody would explain it to me better, because maybe I'm just looking in the wrong direction. But I welcome
the guy's nuts, okay? Let's just leave. I mean, he's literally nuts. He's trying to hide his taxes. That's what this is all about. The grifting. He's literally.
So in this room time here, and when Gary calls on you, in order to stay in this room, you will need to follow the rules.
I'm just talking about the war in and of itself, and how is it going to proceed? And I think that Trump considers it over. He's looking for a different way out. I don't think that he is going to do what he was told he would need to do when this first started. And I'm not blaming Israel. I'm blaming Trump. I'm blaming him. And as I said, when we talk about Europe, I really I might be wrong, but I'm trying to understand what Europe gets. We know what they can benefit from, but what do they get ultimately? What is Trump going to do for them? What is the loyalty that he will have to them? And what is the loyalty Trump has to Russia? And does any of them fear Russia? And regarding Germany, remember, Germany had I believe the most bases, army bases, or bases there. That's where people were going when they were injured. They have all these injured people that nobody talks about. It's over 300 people that were injured, 13 or 14 killed, but nobody talks about where did they go? They went to Germany. And what did Trump do? Didn't he just take troops out of Germany to kind of threaten them? Pardon me. Okay, thank you.
So when I made my comments about Europe, and I talked about it may be unpalatable because of the internal political pressures that they have, because of the drumbeat of lies about Israel that's out there, that's affecting the body politic. I also said in the same secondary salvo, my little rant about about the very things that you just said about Trump showing a lack of interest. In fact, I started by talking about Trump showing a lack of interest in continuing the traditional support for Europe that this nation has shown since World War II. So apparently you're under the impression, or the misimpression I should say, that that wasn't part of the discourse. It was. I'm not arguing your point. I'm agreeing with your point.
I was not criticizing you.
I didn't say you were. I didn't say you were
And I
criticizing.
didn't misunderstand you. What I was saying is I was expanding to the part about Russia, because we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. We no longer, Europe and the United States no longer have something that they were both fighting for, both supported. And I can't help but think that that can enter into a decision that Europe might make about loyalty and disloyalty and Russia and Ukraine. Somewhere I think that there's a big picture that everybody thinks about except us. I think Europe does think about the bigger picture. I think we don't realize how close, what the alliance is that Trump has with Russia. Thank you.
I think that with regard to the point that you made, it's an excellent point. That how can we maintain our relationship such as it is right now with Russia at a time when Russia and China, for that matter, are providing satellite assistance to the Iranians that the Iranians have used to attack U.S. military positions. And then the commander-in-chief cozies up to those two world leaders. Of course, Europe is as cognizant of that as you and I are. But my guess is, and it's just a guess, but this would seem logical to me anyway, that what Europe and maybe others are waiting for is for this term of office to expire and an attempt for a reset in the relationship. And my suspicion is that's exactly what will happen. We saw this to a lesser degree occurring during Trump's first term in office, and then there was a reset when Joe Biden became president. And then Trump doubled down on some of these positions that he takes that many find unpalatable. And I think just like people in the United States who are not fans of the president, just as they are waiting out the expiration of his term of office, I think so too are our European allies. And I don't believe that the long-forged relationship is irreparably harmed. That's what I think anyway. I could be wrong, but that's my perspective on it, if anybody cares. Doctor, followed by C.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for inviting me up. You are able to hear me well.
Loud and clear, yes.
Thank you so much. Something that I wanted to mention is this. Everyone knows that Trump is a motor mouth, and people didn't really worry so much about. But he made some of the very important logical mistakes. First thing is that when you want to go for a war, if unless otherwise you are pretty sure that you are going to win, you should never do that. So I see lack of preparation on Trump's side. The second thing is about exit policy. So how do you, in case there is a problem, because you cannot always guarantee any such things that do internationally, you should have some sort of exit policy built into your thought process. I don't think he had done that. The third point I wanted to mention here is that Iran was already down because of so many years of sanctions and other things, and also internal unrest. Iran had nothing to lose. So, in case there is going to be a problem or a stalemate in the war, it is Americans who are going to bear the brunt of this whole situation, not Iran, because Iran is already in deep shit. So, for them, it doesn't change much. So, a desperate opponent is a bit difficult to defeat. And the third thing is, yes, I know that European countries had never really worried about security issues. I can just give you one example. The country where I work in Europe took almost 8 years to sanction 1 million euros for a military type of a project, European Defence Agency project. But in the last 2 years, they have not double, 4 times now. They are ready to sponsor the project, and that too within about 6 to 8 months. So you see the big change that European countries are doing now. Trump could have somehow used the Ukraine war to get a little bit more active, resourceful participation from the Europeans rather than simply alienating them. And how did he alienate? He simply spoke lots of illogical things about Greenland and other things, which he was not even really attempting or trying to do something about it. But because of his foolish statements, he alienated. And another important thing that I wanted to say is this. Americans are already seeing for the last 4 years, Ukraine-Russia war, how the war is progressing. And Ukraine is desperate with all the support and things like that. With so much of sanction, Russia is continuously bombarding. Ukraine is suffering with all the support from Europeans and Americans. So nowadays, wars are not really won just like that. It has to be very well planned, and it should get internal support, which I don't think Trump had. The last point, maybe it's for just for the sake of interest for other listeners. Pakistan is being used as a mediator, but it is very well known. A.Q. Khan, the so-called Pakistan's nuclear father of nuclear program, he stole from one of the European universities, which has got a nuclear reactor on its campus, and he stole that and went to Pakistan, and then he was the one who gave it to Iran, or at least partially gave it to Iran as well as North Korea. And Trump is trying to use Pakistan as the mediator. So, for about the credibility of the Pakistan as a country for this negotiation, and Iran, which has been one of the major beneficiary of this stealing of nuclear-related information from this university. So, having said this, I feel that the only option for Americans, I really respect them a lot because of so much of work, scientific work, that America the last century. So the only way I think is to wait for 2 more years and then we elect a better leader. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you, Doctor. And you're right about Mr. Khan and his sticky finger approach to procurement of nuclear weaponry. Let's go to C, followed by Amir. C, are you with us? That's funny. They took the mic.
No, I can't talk. I'm sorry. I'm a little. I'm sorry.
All right, we'll go to Amir, followed by Ian.
Hi, Gary. Thank you. Just a couple of quick points. I agree with a lot of things that previous speakers said. I think his name was Agent. And I'd also like to make a comment about what you said, Gary, regarding the waiting game that you mentioned on the side of the Ayatollahs. So I don't actually think they're going to fall for that. I think the Trump team, if you like, is not going to fall for that game, and I don't think. Also, I don't think it matters really who is negotiating on the Iran side. I think there's very clear objectives that Trump has, and he has been pursuing that since last June, when the mission was not accomplished in the 12-day war of June 2025. They thought they may be able to accomplish that by sealing the entire established enrichment farm and burying, if you like, the enriched uranium, but that didn't happen. So I think the agenda is still the same, and it's not really about negotiations as such. I actually think it's about submission. I think it's about in terms of handing over the 400 kg enriched uranium. Well, actually, it's not 400 kg. It's a lot more. It's just that 400 kilograms of it is enriched to 60% plus. But there is a whole host of other enriched uranium which are at 50% and 40%. I mean, that's the nature of enrichment anyway. So that's one objective, and the other objective is abolishing the centrifuge farms, and of course putting back on the missile program. So these are very clear objectives that he had. He didn't achieve last June, and he is pursuing that. And I think really the negotiation thing is a red herring. Now, Iran has obviously spent literally over $1 trillion on developing these. So naturally, they're not going to kind of hand these over on a plate. So the logical, I mean, I just want to cut my argument very short. The logical outcome, given the situation that both sides are, is basically another conflict. I can't see any other way out of it. Even if my sort of what I've just supposed, if that is correct, then there is no other way other than another conflict. Now, obviously, that's not going to involve boots on the ground. I mean, that's insane, and that's just not going to happen. The experience of Afghanistan and Iraq has shown that that's not going to happen. So it's not going to be an all-out war, but it could be kind of an attack on infrastructure to further cripple the economy, and of course, to cripple the governance in general, so that it would come to submission effectively, or a kind of a commando-style operation to dismantle and kind of destroy the enrichment facilities and the missile facilities. So those are the points that I wanted to make.
Thank you, Amir. Always appreciate your perspective. Andrew, followed by David.
Good afternoon, Gary. You can hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Great. Yeah, I'm not so sure that Iran's forcing Donald Trump's hand in this. I think Donald Trump is a victim of his own propaganda. I think you were correct earlier on when you hoped that when you speculated that his thoughts were, like Donald Trump and I have the greatest military in the world. I sincerely think he believes this kind of stuff, and he's very braggadocious. And sometimes, people will believe their own press, and as he is his own press person on Truth Social, I think he tends to believe this stuff. But I'm going to make a hockey analogy, if you don't mind.
My favorite sport, so you go right ahead. I love hockey analogy.
The other night, Montreal was playing Buffalo in Game 7. Game 7 is, there's no other thing to do other than win or go home, right? And at the beginning of this conflict, among other things that were stated in terms of what the reasoning was behind, somebody mentioned about Marco Rubio and Israel was going to go in, so the United States had to, in fear of their assets being attacked in retaliation, which happened anyway. We've seen that. But he also said that in terms of unconditional surrender. Well, when you back somebody up like that, existentially, then they're going to fight till the bitter end. However that end comes, and whatever destruction that might incur. I've given this analogy before in terms of Germany in World War II. They fought to the very end. Not everybody, of course, but those that believed it did. And it cost a lot of lives to go in there and finally get the surrender. I think the Allies were surprised at how long the nation fought, even with all the destruction. I mean, you had Hamburg, Dresden, Berlin was destroyed, and much of Europe. And even with all that destruction, they fought on till the very end. So I'm not so sure that anything's different here in terms of Iran. The other thing that was mentioned was this blockade. I don't know how successful or how valuable that is when they, like Ukraine, have allies in Russia and China. China may not be getting oil right now, or substantially less, but I'm sure they're prepaying for oil, and so those monies are flowing in. And I'm not sure that Russia has any money to give them, but they certainly have been supplying them across the Caspian. So this waiting game that we're talking about now, I think Iran has the capability to outweight the United States, outweight Donald Trump in any event, because this power is extended. It costs a lot of money to do so. And of course, the support for the war is not well established in the United States. There was one other point I was going to make, but I can't remember it quite right now, so I'll land there. Thanks, Gary.
So since you opened the door by talking, but right, how'd you know where I was going?
Because I know you.
I want to congratulate your nation on winning the first Walter Cup. You may not get the Stanley Cup, but you got the Walter Cup. And I will say that I'm not saying this in a negative sense, because that women's professional hockey league is fantastic.
Yeah, but you're wrong, though. You guys won last year.
No, wasn't this the first Walter Cup?
No. The first one was this is the second season. So last year, I believe it was either Minnesota, I can't remember who, but it was, I know Toronto was in there, but then they were booted out. So, yeah, no, you guys won the first one.
Yeah. Oh my God, I didn't even know that league existed. And then I stumbled across them on television and I said, whoa, what am I looking at here? It just fantastic hockey. Great to see that women are out there playing a tough game such as hockey. And I told my daughter and my son-in-law that next season, I want to take my granddaughters to, so they can see that women can perform just as well as men on the athletic field. They're just fantastic. It's a joy to watch them.
Great.
And I'm sure the check from the Women's Professional Hockey League is in the mail to me for that product placement.
Your promotion, yes.
Thank you, Andrew. David, followed by Daryl. David.
Sorry about that, Gary. All right. So I don't know if you talked about it in the room, but there was a story that broke regarding there was a plan afoot for the United States to reinstall Ahmadinejad in a similar fashion to the way that Rodriguez was installed post taking out Maduro. This was a plan that fell apart in the first round of bombings. They attempted to free Ahmadinejad from house arrest, and he's since disappeared. This is an interesting.
I'll read that, David. I'll read that in Disturb Me to the Hell.
What was that again? I'm sorry.
I said I'll read that, and it disturbed me to the hell. I was so scared this morning.
Okay. Yeah. No. Absolutely. This was obviously this guy was playing both sides. He was an anti-Israel Holocaust denier. An anti-West president for Iran, and then of course, he probably was behind a lot of the terrorist acts. So how this was attempted to take
Whose lame brain idea was that?
it doesn't say in the article. It just says if you remember, Trump was made a comment along the lines of wouldn't it be great if we could find somebody from the inside to take over? And so he was kind of stealthily messaging that.
So the implication here is that this was our president's idea?
In tandem with Israel's.
I don't think Israel would have been in support of that.
But that's not what the article says.
Really?
Yeah, and the article also accuses Ahmadinejad of spying for Israel. That he was an inside mole. So, I was trying to figure out how they broke the story.
Who broke that story? I'm going to look it up. This is very interesting.
The New York Times.
Oh, the New York Times.
Yeah, it was in New York Times, but I think this is the propaganda game from them.
Yeah, okay, wait a minute. Were there any dogs involved in the discussion in this article?
What do you mean by dogs?
Well, it was the New York Times that published the column about how the Israelis were training dogs to rape Palestinian prisoners. So I'm just wondering, since it was the New York Times, the credible source that it is when it comes to issues in the Middle East, I was just curious whether any dogs are involved in this.
Yeah, no dogs involved in the story, Gary. I'm happy to report.
What do you mean, David? Ahmadinejad is a dog.
Well, I mean, look, he would have been our dog if his story would have been carried out the way that they intended it. But anyway, yeah. So there's that story that's surfacing. Again, this is probably why we went in and did what we did. And then there was also talks of the Kurds were supposed to also usher in their response to this attack and assist us in possibly installing Ahmadinejad as the new leader, de facto leader. So that obviously did materialize as well. So here we are, Gary. Here we are bogged down in this situation. It also was reported by Reuters, although Pakistan denies the veracity of the allegations, that they've sent 8,000 troops to Saudi Arabia. They're sending warplanes as well as air defense systems. And I don't know how this affects their neutral Switzerland role in negotiating peace, but there's clearly an attempt there to cozy up to the Sauds, who are absolutely against us continuing the bombing campaign into Iran. So maybe they're preparing for the inevitability that, as we've talked about in the room, that they're not going to turn over any of the nuclear material that they have, and this will ultimately force the boots on the ground response. But again, Pakistan is denying that allegation. So, Gary, I don't know that we have a hand here really, other than to just back away, fight another day. But if we allow this to stabilize, it's only going to embolden the regime. It's only going to allow them to reconstitute their military. Obviously, do whatever they have to do with those fissure materials, and so I don't know. It's a very tense, big pickle environment here that I don't really have a lot of response for. I will say that we are attempting, in my opinion, based on other things I've read, that because we can't take China on directly, and we saw sort of that hand being played in Beijing, that the only play we have is to take ally ships that they have with these oil regions, Venezuela, Iran, and others, and disrupt the oil game. We've seen how we've disrupted the oil game with regard to Europe and its energy dependence on Russia, which has been a big win for China because now that cheap energy is flowing that way. And Europe's been forced to buy from us now, buy from the gypsy states where this natural gas is produced, and big states like Texas. So yeah, we have a situation, Gary, where the international stage is being played out like no other. We have the rumblings of potentially Alberta.
Is there anything wrong with people purchasing natural gas from us? It seems like it would be an upside to the U.S. economy.
Well, it's not so much that it's a win for us, but Europe's paying higher prices, I believe, for that same oil, because look at how far it's got to be shipped and transported to feed Europe's energy structure, right? So it's not, Russia's right there with a pipeline, and we destabilized that. And obviously the Ukraine war obviously muddled those relationships.
Yeah, because it made them reliant on Russia in a way they shouldn't have been.
But now they're not reliant. But now we're telling them they're not our allies anymore, and that NATO no longer exists. And we're forcing them. We're saying that they've been sucking on the United States tit for too long, and we want to wean them off of that. So so what do they do? Where do they go? So they're also, we've left them in a lurch on some level. So anyway, I hope the bombing does not continue, Gary. This can only end one way, and that's badly. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. If we had a strategy, if we had a solution, we'd be playing it out by now. And I don't think we really have one. And that's just my opinion. Thank you.
So with regard to this Ahmadinejad story and how he's a Holocaust denier, but a spy for Israel at the same time, and all this kind of stuff, I am, as soon as we're off the air here, I'm going to contact one of my sources, who you may have heard of before, who should be able to sort this out for us, my good friend Dr. Jack Ryan, and he will give us a good analysis. Maybe we can even have him come on tomorrow to talk about that. And the reason I picked Dr. Jack Ryan is because, holy cow, that's a Tom Clancy novel if I ever heard one. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Google the name. It's a fictional character, a Tom Clancy character. But holy cow, this is the makings of a Jack Ryan Netflix movie.
It's pretty interesting, Gary. I have to say, I was pretty blown away by it and how they wrote the story. I would need to find out. That'd be interesting to know.
Yeah. Well, I just certainly hope that they didn't use the same sources that they used to break the story about the dogs.
But see, I was of the opinion that Ahmadinejad died in those attacks, but they're saying he didn't die, and he's just been disappeared. So they don't know his whereabouts. So.
Well, if the word leaked out to the Iranian government that the United States and Israel were colluding to reinstitute the presidency of Ahmadinejad, I think he would disappear. And if he wasn't dead before, he probably is now.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Daryl, you get the last word for the day.
Yeah, I actually, Gary, I thought when you said Jack Ryan, I actually thought you were joking around at first. That was actually pretty good.
You like that one?
That was awesome.
So
that was
at first you thought I was joking, and then you thought it was real. That's pretty funny.
When you said Jack Ryan, Ryan, but then you said you're going to have him come into the room tomorrow. So I'm like, wait a minute, is he serious? You know, like I wondered if it was going to be Tom Clancy or Alec Baldwin. You know, so to Marshall, to something Marshall said, you know, Marshall, it's in a way it's cool that America can sell, you know, its oil, but the problem becomes what's it settling in. So America sells its oil, it settles in dollars. The biggest issue here is about the dollar being the world's reserve currency, and that's the problem that we're staring down the barrel at. If you look at what's happening economically, you know, treasury rates are up, the 10-year is up, it's up and going up and up, and this is China's 18th birthday party. This is what they've been waiting for a very long time. And they're seeing this as an opportunity to become, you know, the ascendant economic power in that part of the world if you can get more countries to drop the dollar with regards to oil sales and settle in whatever currency they choose. And I promise you, the majority of those currencies will be the RMB. And it just doesn't bode well for us. To Andrew's point, you know, China is, you know, Gary, you said that they're giving them information, but they're doing more than that. They're prepaying for oil. I think so far this year, it's $10 billion just in sales that we can see. But they're doing currency swaps because China has invested in the energy transportation industry in Iran. They're building physical things, and I think what we're looking at here is, do we actually want to do something that triggers an actual kinetic conflict with China if China thinks that their investments in Iran or their assets in Iran or their strategic interest in oil coming off the dollar, are they willing to also send soldiers to fight, you know, in some type of proxy conflict in Iran? And I think that's really what we're thinking about as we, you know, try to use Pakistan to come to some type of resolution for this, because what we want, I know we talk about the nuclear material and Trump goes on and he says this and that. I think strategically what America really wants is for the straits to be open and for oil to be free flowing as it was, and for oil to be settling in US dollars, because that's really what American power is based on. You know, I think Meryl made a great point where she was saying, you know, we are allies. We're basically giving our allies the middle finger, and we are outwardly cozying up to Putin. If I were Poland, I'd be very concerned about this. If I were, you know, Germany is going to be considered now the backstop, or at least the front line of possible Russian invasions. You know, I think they're so bogged down in Ukraine that I don't think, and many don't think that that's something that would happen. But the diminishing of soft power, particularly soft military power, that America has established since World War II is pretty much gone, and that should scare all of us. And again, the idea, I'll just end it on this. The idea that, you know, NATO is not the ally that we wanted them to be. NATO has done, I believe, exactly what we've always asked them to do. You know, and we talked about this previously, that NATO may have been, you know, deficient on some of their funding, but as I always understood it when I was on Wall Street, that it was always a wink, wink, nod, nod thing. You know, like, so you guys are going to be short on your NATO funding, but hey, we need you to buy treasuries. NATO countries hold about $8 trillion in New York debt. New York debt, in U.S. debt. And, and they do it when we ask them. So, hey, we buy our debt. We need you to buy some of our debt. Okay, we'll take some of our defense money and we'll put it into your debt. Okay, everybody winks, everybody nods, everybody handshakes. And the world continues as it should be. I think that this idea that, when Trump came out, he said, well, NATO hasn't done anything. They didn't send any soldiers into, I think he said Afghanistan. And the Brits were highly offended by this. There's something happening here because it doesn't make sense. And I really hope somewhere someone's writing a movie on this because, like I said, time is history's greatest detective, and at some point all of this will be unveiled. Thank you, Gary.
So when you were talking about purchasing some of our debt, and then you juxtapose that with the president's misstatement of Europe's participation in Afghanistan, I'm wondering that in each of these cases, whether this is just the president making an argument to make an argument for whatever reason he wants to make that argument that we don't understand, or whether he is oblivious to the facts. We had a guy come on the stage today who made an argument that was inaccurate. He was, either deliberately misportraying the facts or he was oblivious. It doesn't matter because it's just some guy on the stage in a clubhouse room. But we're talking about the President of the United States. So with regard to Afghanistan, you probably don't have any area of expertise that gives your sense of the matter any more value than anybody else. But with regard to the finances, we know that you're an expert in this. So what is your sense? Do you think the president, when he flipped off Europe, was unaware of how they've helped us with our debt? Or what? I don't get it.
I think he calculates, for the most part. We all know he's not inherently honest, right? So is the question, is he making a mistake or is he telling a calculated lie to gin up animosity or an adversarial leaning in the people that follow him? It's funny. It's funny listening to certain people come into the room. At some point, some literally will have you thinking that Trump is some political Stephen Hawking, and he's playing 10-dimensional chess, and at the same time he's falling asleep in meetings. So two things can be true as long as they don't contradict each other. He knows he tells things. I believe he does know that he says things that are not true, but I believe he's targeting who he's speaking to. At some point, someone, he's surrounded by military advisors. Someone would have told him, hey, that's not true about NATO non-participation in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I think he makes a calculated decision as to what will fire up his people, whether it's true or not, because I personally don't think he believes that his followers care about what is true and what's not true.
I think that's a pretty good analysis, Carol. I'm glad I asked you.
Thank you. Tom Clancy tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. Jack, did you get all that? He's getting into the role right now. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. New York time. So until 5 p.m. New York time tomorrow. For the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum, everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
I
Whatever.
appreciate y'all.
See, you get loose and then you forget. It's fine. No, you.
Nah, I forgot. You know what? I jumped on. Nah, literally, I was just on a phone.
I'm considering our friendship. I don't know. I'm gonna consider it. I don't know. I'm gonna consider it. I'm gonna think.
See, you're in
What's
the
going
matrix.
on? Oh.
Matt Goliath, did you see the news?
What news?
That's
Is your name there?
oh,
Goliath, to the stage. Did he come in or did he leave?
Oh, you know what I was talking about the again? Yes.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, he dropped out, right? Oh, he's in the chat. He probably, you know. No, I'm talking about
Omari, you're not mad. Excuse me, sir. You said you're gonna wait for your grand crescendo in 2 hours. So you just wait. Sit down. Come on, Matt Goliath.
That's not bubble bath and give you a
I asked Omari for help and he said no. He said come follow me where I go.
No, you said what I got. You know how like sometimes people say what you got going on too. And I said,